I'm going to talk about some immune cells first, and then, or actually the process of immunity first, and then I'll talk a little bit about immune cells. So I've talked previously about innate immunity. This time I'm going to talk about specific immunity. So now specific immunity is where the body is actually able to find a particular invader and mount a specific defense against them. Now, the caveat to that, of course, is that how do you know that a particular invader is a problem, and how do you know how to mount that defense? Well, the inherent problem with specific immunity is that the first time an invader enters the body, it doesn't know. The body really can only tell that it's a vague invader, and it doesn't know how to put together a proper specific defense. It is only the second and subsequent times that it really does a good job of actually doing that. So, specific immunity always begins exactly the same way that sort of your basic, boring innate immunity did, which is with something entering the body, some kind of little bugger, and that bugger has on it some kind of antigen, which tells the body, hey, I don't belong here. So the first thing that happens is innate immunity kicks in. And so the innate immunity will kick in, and a large phagocyte of some kind, maybe it's a macrophage, maybe it's something else, maybe it's a neutrophil, will grab hold and will eat that bug right up. And when it eats that bug right up, it actually takes those little antigens after it digests the bug, and it spits them out in a way that other members of the immune community can find them. They call this antigen presenting. So this would be an antigen presenting cell. Antigen presenting cell. And it presents that antigen to the immune system, which is then able to figure out what's going on. This process generally starts with the B cells. So B cells are your starting point, and they're hanging out in the body. You have a whole bunch of B cells hanging out in places like your spleen and your lymph nodes that are literally waiting for invaders to come. They're each a little different, and they're each looking for different invaders. And so they might be hanging out there. So if I'm making little B cells, let me go ahead and make little B cells. We have a bunch of B cells just hanging out. They're inactive, they're chilling. And they each would aim for a different sort of shape and size of an antigen that might come by. So maybe this skinny red antigen here from the previous cell fits into this B cell. Now, this B cell can get excited. It will jump up and down, it will activate, and it will start an entire process that will tell the body how to defeat the particular bug that invaded. So B cells have a couple of main jobs, but I'm going to break each of the sets of cells down into just a few of the important ones. So this isn't the only thing these cells do, but it is the starting points. So first of all, B cells start to activate the entire system. They tell the guys in the nerves to send all the signals to the lymphocytes, and it gets all out there, and they start this process. And so they'll activate T cells, but they also have their own job. And so one of the things that they do is they produce some different types of cells. So I'm going to branch B cells in two different directions. In one case, they produce memory cells, and in the other case, they produce plasma cells. Memory cells are for later, so I'll get back to them in a moment. Plasma cells, though, they're important because they are the ones that are going to be part of the defense. So plasma B cells, here are my plasma B cells. What they do is they produce antibodies. Antibodies are these little Y-shaped things. And those antibodies can go looking for and attach to the antigens on the invaders. Foom, foom. There, I've got B cells with little antibodies. So let's grab another one of those invaders. So if our invading cell is back and it has its fancy antigens on it telling us that it doesn't belong, those B cells will start spitting those antibodies out into the bloodstream where they can go after these antigens. So these antibodies will start to stick to the antigens. This does two things. One, it slows everything down, because if you have a whole bunch of antibodies stuck to you, you're not going very far or very fast. You can't enter any cells. You can't cause as much trouble. And also, it tells the big phagocytes, hey, this is something delicious and you should come eat it. So the neutrophils and the macrophages recognize the antibodies and say, oh, that's my thing. I should go eat that. So plasma B cells are that part of the job. Memory B cells are the other side, and their job is to remember that this came by and how to produce this antibody for later. So these guys are not really doing anything right this moment. They're sleepy, so change their color, draw them out here. They still have some stuff that'll be useful. They're mostly waiting for the future, and they get dispersed throughout the body to your lymph nodes in different places. So that's the B cells, and they're important, but they also activate another whole system called the T cells. Oh, neat point about the B cells. They are B cells because they are built and mature in bone marrow. All right. But once the B cells activate, they will also go ahead and activate the T cells. The T cells are called that because they mature in the thymus. We're going to talk about two different kinds of T cells. There's a whole bunch of different kinds of T cells. Cytotoxic or killer T cells and helper T cells. Helper T cells are your rallying cry cells. They like to make T cells orange. They like to run around and tell others that it's time to join this party. So these are our little T cells, and their job is to travel throughout the body and tell others to join this party, to get other white blood cells to come, to start the process of vasodilation, stuff like that. The cytotoxic T cells, they're real important because they're the ones that actually go after the bug. So if we have our little annoying bug and it has its little annoying antigens on it, the cytotoxic T cells have been activated, and they're also somewhat specific. They go along with the B cells. In this case, they've been told, go kill this guy. And so what the T cells will do, this is where you get my fancy art skills, is they will come right up here to, draw them a little bit better, right up here to the bug. And they're a little crazy. They get X's for eyes. He gets a funny smile, a little bit of a nose. And he, bump, is going to punch him. They're cytotoxic because they are cell killing. So cyto for cell, toxic for destroy. And they have chemicals that break apart the little bugger so that it is, vump, going to be dead. So cytotoxic T cells kill things. All right, so now let's backtrack and remember what these things do for a comparison. So B cells and T cells. B cells, first of all, mature in bone marrow. They produce antibodies. They remember pathogens. And they're really sort of the leaders in the process a lot of time. They tell other cells a lot of what to do. I also consider them the ranged fighters of this whole process because they stand in the back and they yell orders and they throw antibodies at different people, and that's what they do. The T cells, they mature in the thymus. They do a couple different things. They produce cell killing chemicals. They poke holes in cells. They gather other immune cells. And really, they are the front lines in a lot of cases, right up there trying to do the thing. And so I call them the melee fighters because you can think of T cells as literally up in the front punching things. How are they similar? Well, both of these fall into the category of lymphocytes, which was a category of white blood cells. So they're very similar, and they're both part of the specific immunity. That is really the biggest part of specific immunity and how that works. So the real interesting concept, of course, is how long does that take, that whole process of inviting all of those cells in, getting them involved, getting them to ramp up, killing the actual thing? You know how long it takes? It takes typically at least 2 weeks for that specific immunity to find its way. Now, this can mean a handful of different things. In 2 weeks, it could mean that your innate responses have killed a lot of the virus, and although the specific immunity is important, it's not necessary, and it has already destroyed a lot of what's going on, so it'll be useful. In some cases, your innate immunity has trouble getting to the pathogen, and in 2 weeks, that pathogen has done a lot of damage, and now your body is finally able to start fighting against it, which can be problematic or really good. So we'll think about this in a couple of different ways. So the common cold and the flu are both slightly different versions of sort of specific immunity. You can't catch either of the same version twice. Unfortunately, there's a lot of both of them, and they both like to mutate. So it's a little bit hard for specific immunity to work second times. The common cold viruses, the rhinoviruses, most of them are pretty low key. It's pretty easy for your innate immune responses to get to them. So by the time your specific immunity kicks in, a lot of the rhinovirus is already probably gone, and you're just doing sort of final defenses. It's one of the reasons that in a cold, usually a cold takes a couple days to get. So you're around somebody who has a cold. 2 to 3 days later, you start getting symptoms, and they're usually pretty mild, like you feel a little tired, maybe your throat's starts to feel a little bit painful. And then those ramp up, and your innate defenses jump in, and inflammation jumps in and does a good job of killing those cold viruses. And so the virus numbers decrease. Then your specific immunity gets involved. It starts throwing antibodies at it. The helper cells bring things in, and it keeps up that process, which is why if you catch a cold, you might feel like crap for a few days at the beginning, and then you often have lingering symptoms, stuffy nose, cough, extra mucus, things that you can't get rid of, because the specific immunity at that point is like, wait a second, you said there was a bug, let's take care of it. And then it gets rid of it, and all those symptoms subside, and a lot of that was your immune system. The flu, you often catch a little bit quicker within a day or two of being around somebody who's got the flu. You're going to start to feel it. And in this case, your innate defenses go after it, but they're not as good. So a lot of times, the flu, which is, let's see if I can remember which kind of virus causes the flu. Type of flu virus. So flu is caused by an orthomyxovirus. Isn't that a cool word? And those guys begin to attack your respiratory cells. They're a little harder for the innate system to catch. So you need specific immunity to actually catch up to you most of the time. Therefore, there are still active cells in your respiratory system. After a week or so, the specific immunity kicks in, it starts producing antibodies, and it does a pretty good job of destroying them, but you're going to be sick probably for at least a week, if not 2, and feel it pretty badly because your innate defenses can't get to it. Let's go even further along the stream to see what kind of bugs you can encounter. So Ebola is another virus that you can get immunity to, but here's the problem with Ebola. I should find out what kind of virus that is, just so I get it right. Oh, they're actually just Ebola viruses. They fall into a larger category. I love the categories of viruses. It's probably one of my favorite things. Yep, they are their own little thing. So, Ebola viruses. Ha! The problem with those is that they destroy cells at a much faster rate. So during the 2 weeks of your body forming an immunity to the Ebola virus, it is literally out there destroying your organs. And it's causing your innate immunity to get even more and more annoyed, which causes even more and more problems, which means destruction happens even faster. So that's a big part of the problem with Ebola, is that it destroys your cells faster than your immune system can destroy it, at least the first time through. Again, though, if you get it, you'll produce antibodies to it. Where are we at right now? Well, we are dealing with a disease called COVID-19, caused by the SARS-CoV-2 virus, which happens to be a coronavirus. So these are all different types of viruses. Rhino means nose, by the way. I don't remember what Ebola is named for. Orthomyxo, I think, has to do with the number of different proteins that are involved in it. And corona means crown, because they look like they have a crown under an electron microscope. So here's what's happening with this virus, is it's doing something somewhere in between flu and Ebola, in that it is affecting the cells and it's destroying them. And your innate system is trying real hard, but it's not doing a great job. So it holds it down for a little while they start to divide. And then they continue to divide. Your specific immunity is still taking 2 full weeks to try to start to kick in. And by that point, you have pissed off your innate immune defenses, and they have started throwing everything they can at this virus, including lots of cell-killing chemicals. In this case, some of them are called cytokines. Interferons and cytokines are both cell-killing chemicals that your body throws at things. And a big part of what can happen is that the idea is, if these viruses are in a cell, just kill the cell. That kills all the viruses, right? That's a great idea if you have enough cells. So if the cells are in safe places, like your throat, you'll damage a little bit, but there'll be more to come. If they're in places like the inside of your lungs, now you have very, very thin membranes, and if you start killing those cells, it's going to cause even more trouble. And damaging lung cells decreases oxygen levels, which your entire body needs for energy. And that's because that's where it becomes a problem. The bonus to all of these, again, is that specific immunity means the next time around it works better and you have antibodies. So if you had to venture a guess at how long you think it takes your body to go after something the second time around, it takes only a day or so. In 24 to 48 hours on the second round, your body can find, put into action all the antibodies it needs and all the cells it needs, and destroy something, sometimes before you would even notice it. Interestingly enough, this is why in the cases of Ebola and now currently with COVID, one of the things we're using is the plasma from people who've recovered from these diseases, because it contains the antibodies from the specific immunity. Their body made these antibodies. We're trying to throw them at somebody else to try to help them before their body goes into overdrive or they lose too many cells to the virus. This process of taking 2 weeks to create your own antibodies, called active immunity, and this process of giving people antibodies after the fact would be called passive immunity. It means they didn't make them, but we're giving them to them to try to produce that sort of extra thing where the body jumps in faster. All right, so if the problem is that the cells kill a whole bunch of, the viruses kill a whole bunch of body cells before we're able to get to them, and your body is unable to do it quick enough the first time, but the second time it's really easy, wouldn't it be great if you could tell the body who's the bad guy to start with, so that the next time the bad guy comes in, it would know, and you could do that without getting any symptoms? Turns out you can. All you have to do is introduce a version of the antigen that doesn't have the original bug involved. So if this is my original bug, and these are its antigens, normally it spreads them by entering my body and getting noticed by an antigen-presenting cell. But what if instead I was able to just take those antigens and put them in my bloodstream? Would the body still recognize them as foreign? It does. It will recognize them as foreign. It will grab them with an antigen-presenting cell, and it will start the entire process of B cell and T cell production. Those cells will run around trying to do their job of throwing antibodies at things and killing stuff, but there won't be anything there to kill, so they won't do that. Since there was very little to activate the innate immune system, because the innate immune system really is looking to eat those big cells, that doesn't activate. And you can produce the memory without producing any of the symptoms. A couple different ways that we do this. One of them is literally by just cutting out the bits of the antigen and putting them in the body. Sometimes we still want to carry them along in some kind of semi-living creature, something that will replicate so that you can make more of them, because the idea, of course, is to have as many as possible. But we take out all the bad stuff in the guy. So we can completely engineer a cell so that it can have antigens on it, but it will do so without hurting you. So it doesn't attack cells, it doesn't invade, it doesn't do any of that stuff, but it replicates and makes more antigens for your body to notice. So that would be what we'd call a live virus. It's not infecting you, but it is able to replicate in some manner. So that's a live vaccine. Nowadays, we're also making DNA and RNA vaccines, which are really cool because they cause your body to produce the antigen so that your body notices it and treats it as a foreign invader without, again, activating any of the innate immunity that causes all the trouble. So that's what we like about vaccines, is they do the job of specific immunity without causing all of the damage. And really, they're one of the best things that are out there. Vaccines are absolutely considerably safe, certainly not any less safe than anything else that you eat or drink or put in your mouth that are around you all the time. And you do not want to know how many bugs are trying to invade your body constantly. So throwing a few more at it doesn't really change much. I consistently and strongly recommend vaccines.